session based on information management, security, and privacy. And our first speaker to go today would be Ahmed Hussein, who's the Managing Director of Reload Security Services. And he's the founder of Reload, the first private computer emergency response team in the Gulf region. He consults in cybersecurity threats, assists in responding to incidents, and design mitigation process. He has helped many financial institutions and large corporations in securing their networks and safeguarding their data. He worked closely with retail, investment, and central banks in the region to establish cyber defense and response teams. He also speaks regionally and internationally on topics of information and cloud security. So Ahmed Hussein, can we start off?
So for the 20 people who are here, I hope you enjoyed the session. It's a good thing that we are in a small number, so let's make it more interactive. I want this panel to be like more discussion than just a straightforward presentation. It's not for me here to tell you, like, I'm sharing my experiences. The guys here are sharing their experiences, and we actually want to hear what you have to say and share with us. So yeah, so I wanted to talk about the privacy in the age of surveillance. So as security experts, we are, it's a tiered between securing ourselves against things while, for example, governments or other authorities trying to see things in order to provide homeland security. So we are in the middle of that, and we're trying to see how we can secure ourselves and at the same time not disclose much. If you take it at a government level, is that, but if you take it as a corporate level, you want to see what your employees are doing sometimes, but you actually also want to protect their privacy. So you need to put those policies, you need to basically deal with it. So basically, I wanted to start with a saying by Helen Keller. She says, security is mostly a superstition. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. So one thing I always hear, for example, everything is going towards the cloud. And I always hear that, no, we don't want to go to the cloud, security, 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 and that's about it. No one has digging deeper to understand what's the security measures behind the cloud. I also want to show you two types of people that, basically are celebrities. So you have at the top Julian Assange saying, hi, I'm Julian Assange. I provide private information about corporations and governments to the public for free, but I'm seen as a villain. While, hi, I'm Mark Zuckerberg. I provide private information about individuals to corporation for money on the Time Magazine's Man of the Year. So between these two, you need to see how people perceive things differently and how they are being marketed by the media outlets differently. I'm sure you all heard about the Snowden revelations. So he actually said all the biggest company actually do, surveillance, or they provide information, and Microsoft is on the list, all the Googles, Facebook, the big names. And the thing is, he is arguing that they are providing this information in order to do, cope with the surveillance, while in certain other ways, like those big corporations are telling we don't do that, and all the capacity we've done is we done 1, 2, 3, 4, and we agree to those terms. To the level, correct me, Cyril, if I'm wrong, Microsoft actually released how many times and how many things that it actually reported got asked to investigate to the public to be transparent. So you have this fight between big corporates, privacy evangelists, and governments pushing for things in the middle. You've heard about what Snowden said about GCHQ. GCHQ is the NSA equivalent in the United States. And one of the projects they were having is called the Project Tempora, where they stored data for 30 days. All the data passing through the UK is being stored for 30 days. So this is one of the things they have been doing and they're still doing. But let me ask you this. Who knows what this logo is? From the audience, guys. Anyone have seen this logo before? Sure, go ahead. DuckDuckGo, yeah. So it's a search engine called DuckDuckGo. And the only difference to it is it does the same thing almost as Google search, but it maintains your privacy. And it came up since the Snowden revelation. I thought people cared so much about privacy, about their anonymity online, and I thought that people would go and start using it and ditch Google, ditch Bing, ditch Yahoo, ditch everyone. But when I looked at the numbers, they were stunning. So you see 60 million hits per day before the Snowden revelation, jumped to 90 million a day afterwards, while Google is still at the 13 billion, search hits every day or every month. That clearly showed me that people like to make a big fuss about things they don't know, just because they feel that their privacy was breached. But when they will still go back home, use your Windows laptop, log into Google, and or use Skype. This is something I don't really understand. So if you're a pro-privacy, and you need to do something about it, otherwise don't claim it, don't do it. So to keep my presentation short, I've always heard of initiatives involving PPP, public-private partnerships. You go to any organizations, you go to any big corporate, to any government, to startups, and they all fight for it. They want the public-private, partnership. But I have another model, which I believe is better when it comes to privacy and security, which is 4 Ps, which is public, private, because people partnership. Because when you say public, some cases it means the government authorities, and some other cases actually means people, but it doesn't, differentiate. Government not necessarily will do what the people want or hear them, and private sector will do what makes money for them. So I want to add the people part and make it a 4P instead of 3 in order to achieve what you want of privacy in the age of communication surveillance. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. Up next is Sebastian Madden, who's the Group Director of Cyber and Technology Protection Group International. He leads PGI's international cyber capability transfer projects, works with government and law enforcement in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. He's developed and implements cyber services which draw on PGI's training, security research, cyber intelligence, risk mitigation, and response capabilities. He is also a member of Cyber Advisory Panel to Plowshare Innovations, which manages technology transfer on behalf of the Defense Science and Technology Laboratory. Sebastian, please.
I wanted to follow Ahmed's presentation, really, which I think set out very clearly some of the dangers that can happen when you go too far down the route of surveillance. And as Ahmed has said, some of the ways in which you can address these. I'll follow a slightly similar course, but perhaps, as you might expect with my background, veering slightly more towards the security side of the piece. And will argue that while surveillance needs to be kept in check, absolutely, to avoid the sorts of abuses that we've seen, we also need it in order to keep the internet as a safe and thriving vehicle for the global economy. Now, I don't need to tell a group like this, which is clearly experts and practitioners, about the benefits of e-commerce. As Shruti said earlier, the figures speak for themselves. 53% of transactions in 2014 will be enabled by the internet in one way, shape or form. This is a vital vehicle for global commerce, for the free exchange of ideas, and it's hugely important that we keep it pretty well the way it is. But I think it is also undeniable that at the moment the internet and people using it is under some degree of threat. We're seeing a whole range of different types of malicious activity on the internet, taking advantage of network-enabled computers, taking advantage of the fact that machines can communicate with one another and can be communicated with by humans. This isn't new. It's the same old people doing the same old things. As Ahmed says, it's government conducting espionage on the people that government has always liked to conduct espionage on. It's criminals carrying out activities designed to steal or defraud. It's others carrying out acts of criminal damage, be they activists, people trying to make a point, or people just having fun. But all of these are making the internet a somewhat more dangerous place for those of us who want to enjoy the economic benefits of it. And worse, these are things that are potentially damaging public confidence. We are all building businesses that rely on a safe and stable internet with the sorts of figures that were talked about earlier, 70%, 80% of uptake around applications enabling mobile commerce. People won't use these if they think that if they go online, they're going to get their computer infected or they're going to get their money stolen. We're also seeing an interesting rise in the subset of e-crime, which is crime that wouldn't have existed if it weren't for the internet, or certainly couldn't have flourished at the scale it is. And these are posing different challenges around jurisdiction and justiciability. Just to look at the sorts of news headlines that we're being presented with on a daily basis, you would come to the conclusion that the world is a pretty dangerous place out there, and there are some people with very high-end capability who are potentially going to be having a go at you and your data. Very large government, undue use of the clicker there, very large governments, yes, very large criminal corporations and enterprises, very effective networks of individuals who are coming together, who wouldn't have met were it not for the internet. We've seen some very interesting examples of e-crime in the United Kingdom, where different types of criminal have joined up. Good old-fashioned villains being enabled by hackers who they've hired by the hour using the dark internet forums. Nigerian fraudsters who are having their frauds enabled on a vast scale by Romanian IT students. Some of the dimensions and permutations are quite interesting. The net result is of a scale of attack which is very large and increasing. It's not surprising, therefore, that government is starting to think that it needs to do something about it. Law enforcement is starting to give itself powers and capabilities which will allow it to react. And even as they do so, the threat evolves again, further different and interesting ways to relieve you of your money or your identity using your vulnerabilities as a human, your curiosity, your fear on occasions, the greed or stupidity that all of us can face when put in certain situations. We're also seeing vulnerabilities in the machines themselves being exploited, whether they're industrial control systems, whether they're mobile telephones, whether it's the Internet of Things, the spam that is already being sent from some of the E-enabled fridges. And the list goes on. And as fast as law enforcement tries to keep up, further techniques are invented, which have so far excluded the jurist's pen. If you're sitting from a law enforcement or a government side and watching this tidal wave of malware which is coming at national, at domestic and at corporate machines, you're sitting there faced with a problem around the scale of these attacks and the potential scale of response that you need to bring to bear. You're facing difficulties around jurisdiction. Where has the crime actually taken place? We had a very good example in the United Kingdom where a Scottish police force investigated a crime which they knew had taken place and Scottish businesses had been defrauded. They managed to track down the perpetrators who were operating out of the United States. The money was found in bank accounts across Europe, and the telecom systems that had enabled the fraud were again based in America. So a small regional Scottish police force was able to piece together the elements of this global crime and took it to the Scottish prosecutor's office, who threw out the case on the grounds that although there was a victim and there was clearly some criminality and there were some criminals, they hadn't got a necessary piece of legislation under the Scottish Penal Code under which they could guarantee a prosecution. That's in a case where the criminals had even been identified. Often in such cases, the identity of the criminal themselves is virtually impossible to ascertain, or where the evidence can't be collected. It was there one minute as a stream of ones and noughts. It then isn't there again. And we've all heard stories of police officers trying to take photographs of screens using the cameras on their mobile telephones, and then trying to produce those as evidence in court that the information was at least in existence for a period of time. And when it comes to those new crimes, difficulties around justiciability. Again, if you can't find a criminal code that contains the elements that you need to bring a case against a real crime that has actually involved the theft of money, what's your hope of doing anything against some of the newer forms of crime that haven't even made their way into the statute books as a type of criminality? It's unsurprising, therefore, that from a law enforcement point of view, we can sometimes see what seems to be a somewhat heavy-handed overreaction or a rush to a specialization which is actually unnecessary, where cybercrime is treated as if it's in some way different from normal crime. As an alternative, what we're arguing is that police forces, that intelligence agencies, that governments generally should take a step back and should realize the dangers of killing the goose that's laying the golden egg, of walking down a route which says, on the one hand, we don't want the internet to be a wild west, where the citizens are afraid to go and conduct their lawful business and to carry out their commercial activities. But on the other hand, we don't want to make it such a sterile, sanitized zone where around every corner of it, there's hundreds of different police forces all waiting to catch perpetrators, tripping over one another, involving different cases, different penal codes, different standards around evidence. What this requires is a balanced approach, where the criminality is tackled, but where citizens using it for their own purposes are enabled to do so, where the scope is global, where law enforcement cooperates, where intelligence agencies cooperate to collect the minimum amounts of information that is required to prosecute the crimes, and collects it to the same standards, so that us, businesses, citizens, don't find ourselves on the receiving end of multiple requests for data in multiple formats to be used for purposes that we don't fully understand, of the sort that Microsoft, as was discussed earlier, have publicly revealed that they faced. And that similarly, we're talking about a level of public-private partnership where actually the boot is put back on the foot of the people that are really using the internet to drive commerce, namely business, where it's us who are saying, we are the victims here, these are the crimes that have been committed, this is what we want government to do for us, not this is what we want government to do to us. And finally, the engagement of civil society, which is probably more effective than both business and government in terms of thinking of standards, of oversight mechanisms, of voluntary codes, which can then start to be enforced through peer pressure, which people voluntarily sign up to and then wear as a badge of honor to demonstrate the types of ethics, the types of behaviors, and the types of methods that they will use in order to help play their part in securing the internet. I've got a whole selection of additional slides that I would have used in a slightly longer presentation, which go into a bit more detail on what I think criminal codes should contain in this sort of space, and where we think the public-private partnerships should go, and the types of skills which we think are necessary in law enforcement, in the judiciary, and in prosecutors. But as Ahmed suggests, and I entirely agree, I think in this sort of forum and with a small and expert audience, we're better going straight to the round table discussion. So I think I'll pause there, having set out my thesis for how we should try to keep the internet as a vehicle for commerce and the exchange of ideas, and how we stop it being a preservation of government on the one hand, the preserve of government on the one hand, and criminals on the other. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. Up next is Cyril Watson, who's the Regional Technology Officer at Microsoft Gulf, with a strong focus on cybersecurity one side and cloud computing on the other. He has over 12 years of experience in the subject of safety and has participated in national campaigns in France on security, the protection of infrastructure, and as well as incident management in the fight against cybercrime at a government level. With his knowledge and experience as a speaker, Cyril Watson helps understanding the risks, implementing practices, and how to make security an asset to any company, organization, or modern state. Please, Cyril.
Cybersecurity is a key requirement for any organization today. And to echo what Ahmed was presenting about privacy, there is no privacy if there is no security. So it's very important to mix the two. And you need to find the right balance between the two. And we live today in a world where many companies are having a business model where they sell information about their customers. And basically, we are the products when we go to a website which is free and which is selling advertising. And the new currency is the details about ourselves. So this privacy change is very important. And I think what you were saying about the paradox about people want more privacy, but at the same time, they go to this website is something that is difficult to catch. And probably people don't want to have abusive look at what they do, but they accept that their preferences and these kind of things can be done. Talking about cybercrime, and as you mentioned, Sebastian, basically at Microsoft we take that very seriously. We have a team which is called the Microsoft Digital Crimes Unit. It's a team of lawyers, investigators, technicians, who basically go after the criminals. Who has heard about something called a botnet? Do you know what it is? Yeah, okay, everyone. So this is this network of machines which are infected by a malware and that will go, for instance, to do denial of service attacks, go against a website, for instance, for activists. They can also do click fraud, deliver spam, and all these kind of things. So basically, these infected machines, they take orders from command and control servers. And these command and control servers, we collaborate with law enforcement, with the universities, and once we have reverse engineered the way they work, we take them and we make them neutralized, okay? But we keep them into our own data centers. Why? Because all the infected machine then will call these command and control servers, so we can know which machine is infected. And basically, we have built a big data feed about these infected machines in the world, and we are providing this information to the governments. So basically, most of the countries have what we call a computer emergency response team, a CERT, national one, not the one like Reload, who is a private and very good one. And basically, we are able to provide them the IP addresses of machines which are infected by those botnets we took down with the collaboration of Netherlands police, China CERT, Kaspersky, Symantec, and others. And recently we opened a cybercrime center to make sure that we can have all the people collaborate all together and bring that forward to a new world level. So with that being said, I wanted to cover today just two simple ideas. Maybe three, but the two first will be combined. First of all, I want to talk about information security. When we talk about cybersecurity, today it's very fuzzy in everyone's mind. You want to be protected against someone who's going to be doing fraud inside your organization. You want to be protected against someone who wants to attack you. Is it a nation state? Is it like a script kiddie? You might be confused. So basically, the pillars that I'm displaying here are the 5 activities at which you need to be good at if you want to have serious security. First of all, you need to be able to protect yourself. And this is what I call here prevention. So make sure that nothing bad happens to you. Second, because you're not going to be perfect, and although you can put as many layers as you want in a defense in-depth approach, second, you need to be able to detect. And I see more and more people today in the region trying to do that, be able to detect if someone is happening. Why? Because most of the people who have been attacked by targeted attacks, usually they have spent months, if not years, of not noticing anything, because the attackers want to be stealthy and stay there without being noticed. You all remember the incident that happened to the neighbor countries maybe 1.5 years ago. Some machines being destroyed and all that. Typically, this is the exception. Most of the time, 98% of the time, people who manage to do a targeted attack against your organization, they will try to get not noticed. So you need to be able to detect. But detecting is nothing if you cannot react. So that's why you will have to have a recovery ability. And then, of course, you need to be able to respond. So response is the ability to react, and recovery is if everything went wrong, you need to recover from zero. I added another one, which is containment. And this is probably the most important you can do today. Most of the companies that I advise, they have an installation where they have firewalls, a small DMZ, which is like a control network with the firewalls, and then the rest of the network, which is completely flat. That means it's like an egg, you know, like a hard shell and soft inside. So once you break the shell, you can do whatever you want. So basically, the role of containment is to make sure that you design your security in a way that when you have an issue, it will not spill over all the network, and it will be of a limited impact. And be sure of one thing. There's no single organization in the world, that can say they will never have a successful attack. Attacks will happen. What will make the difference is your ability to contain the attack and your ability to react and recover. So with that said, the second idea that I wanted to share with you is that I've been talking with the people at Microsoft who handle the security incidents, especially after the ones that happened in the oil and gas industry last year. And I asked them, is there any lesson that we can learn from all the attacks that happen in the world? And they said, yes, of course, it's always the same. And you know, taking the risk of sounding like crazy, you know, like people who repeat always the same thing, these are the 3 mitigations, which I call the 3 golden rules, that if you apply them correctly, you can be sure that you could have stopped the attack or you would have slowed down the attack, giving you time to react. What are these 3 mitigations? The first one, you know, being up to date all the time. So how many times do we find when there is an attack, a server which has not been updated for years? So that means tons of known vulnerabilities are there. If someone wants to attack you, they will use an existing vulnerability. That doesn't mean that if you apply all the patches, you will be safe, but at least you're forcing people to use new techniques, not existing and very well-known one. The second aspect is called least privilege. Most of the people who have had security incidents had a problem in managing privileges. That means some people were like power users or administrators, and they were doing tasks which didn't require administrator rights with administrator rights. That means you go to a website to download a driver, the website is infected with a Java exploitation, and suddenly you have given the keys of your company to someone who was running in that web page. Last one is whitelisting. Whitelisting of applications. Most of the time when someone wants to attack you, they will run a new process on your computer, a new program, which is the attack itself. This program, there's no way that you would authorize it if you had to list all the things which are authorized. So every time you have an opportunity in security, there is 2 ways to do security. One way, which is the antivirus one, look at something and tell me if it's wrong. This is not working. It cannot work. It's proven mathematically it cannot work. Why? Because you cannot know everything in advance which is not authorized. The other way is the opposite, is to list what is authorized. This is how a firewall works. And this is efficient. Basically, you list all the applications that are supposed to run on that server. This is a database server, database software only. And with that, it will be easier. So 3 recommendations, very simple. Doesn't mean that once you've done that, you've done everything, but you can increase your security a lot by doing that. Final idea that I wanted to echo from this morning keynote is the idea that you can use cloud computing, public cloud computing, to increase your security. And this is something that was explained very well this morning, but I want to echo that again. And I know there are some people from bank sector who have specific obligation which might not match all the time with that. But in general, when you look at the public cloud computing, because of the scale of the cloud service providers, they can afford to pay the best experts to put in place the best solution for security. And if you look at their business model is subscriptions. So that means you pay for the service as long as you use it. If you don't like it, you stop and you don't pay anymore. That means if you don't have security for these services, you will never get any customer. So security is the #1 feature that they offer. And I just want to give you just one example which went public recently. An oil and gas company called Kufpec in Kuwait. They were threatened by the anonymous hackers back in June 20th of last year. They realized that they needed to block all the USB keys from their PCs for fear of viruses coming with the USB keys. But they needed a way to exchange information. So they decided to go to the public cloud to have what is called today OneDrive for Business. At the time was called SkyDrive Pro, where you can exchange files. It's the same like same category as a Dropbox or something like that, if you know more this solution. And they realized that it was so easy to activate. The time to market is amazing. It's already, the cloud is already ready. It's waiting for you. I mean, you don't have to purchase a server, do something. It's already there. Second, the security was really good. They realized that the security they got was superior to what they had inside. So they decided to use more and more services, including platform as a service, software as a service, infrastructure as a service. So I just wanted to echo that. Don't be mistaken by all the people who are frightened by public cloud. The reality is that what you get in the public cloud, most of the time is a far better security than what you can get inside. Thank you.
Thanks, Cyril. Now we have the questions. So anyone with any kind of questions in regards to the topic over here?
Hi. When you were talking about the three pillars right now, Cyril, about information security, you said prevention, and don't you think the security trainings and which are there in the market, especially the, the global is certified, that isn't it really necessary for a lot of organizations, especially banks or others, to have their people trained and handle such kind of situations, and when then rather than wait for the attack to happen and then go back and say, yeah, now let's get our people trained. Thanks.
Absolutely. You're perfectly right. The awareness part is very important. And in the security world, we have this notion of the security is the result of three elements: people, processes, and technologies. The most important part probably is the processes. So if you need to be organized and know when something happens what you will need to do, and do your own security to get things healthy. But the people part can be the weakest link, first of all. Second, is the only thing that will save you in case the process doesn't work. Because people can use their judgment. So you need, in a company, two things. You need people being trained, and to be honest, this is very, very difficult. I was a teacher on the information security. I would teach something to students, they would understand it. I would then ask them to install some software and then hack into it and ask them what went wrong, and they would go back to their old way of thinking. They will not go back to what they learned, So it takes like 3 times, 4 times, 5 times to get the good aspects. But when everything fails, you need a few people inside your organization or partners outside that can help you. That could be companies who have a specialist who can then exercise their judgment to tell you, okay, we're in this situation, this is the options we have. But you're totally right. Awareness is very important.
Sebastian wants to have a word on that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and thank you very much for the question. I cut the skills part of my presentation in the interest of getting quickly to the discussion. As you absolutely rightly say, the human is the weakest part of the system, the most dangerous bit of the machine. We very much advocate, as Cyril has said, a general awareness training across an organization, absolutely fundamental. It's not the sophisticated users of the systems, it's not the senior experts who are going to be the problem, it's the ordinary individual. If we want to break into a system, the easiest way to do it is from the inside, not from the outside. We'll find the weakest link, we'll find a junior member of staff who probably hasn't had the training, and find a way of getting in through their system, a social engineering attack or a physical break-in in order to access their computer when we're doing ethical hacking type testing. Then secondly, vitally, is making sure you've got the trained individuals who can actually use the software and the hardware that the security industry is selling. I've had too many disappointing conversations with people who have bought high-end capability and then been unable to use it because they haven't got the staff to actually operate the systems. Senior officials in ministries who lament the fact that they have a security operations center which is useless because they haven't got the people who can staff it. They haven't got the people who could react, who would know what to do in the response phase if it did alert to anything. You'd be much better off using the resources on getting a cadre of well-trained cybersecurity professionals, cyber warriors, if you like, within an organization, and then perhaps some rather more basic capabilities, or as Cyril says, relying on cloud services where it makes sense to do so, where you will genuinely get some best-of-breed security. And I think finally, and again a point I was trying to make in my presentation, it's not limiting skilled cybersecurity responses to the cyber professionals in the IT department. There's a lot of additional training that's required around the piece. So we need to have judges who understand how to use digital evidence. We need to have prosecutors who can question expert witnesses when bringing some of these cases to trial. We need law enforcement officers who can recognize a digital crime scene when they see one and know how to secure it in order to make sure that the evidence isn't contaminated before the expert colleagues. So there's huge awareness and training programs. And the other final point I'd like to make is, within all of this, there is a question of sovereignty, of having national capability, where again, we see a lot of equipment, security equipment is manufactured by certain nations. And again, we have clients who have to install that because that's all that's available, but then don't train their own nationals to operate it, and then compound the problem by relying on an expat workforce to operate the systems, thereby introducing even more vulnerabilities into the system. So absolutely, training and national training would be my first priority. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just regarding the cloud computing and the data retention policies, that in the cloud, it could be in any country, and from different countries, you have a different regulation regarding what is the retention period of each data. So how do you just add it to, or to come with the company's strategies? So
basically, first of all, the public cloud can be located into a country which is yours, or a country which is compatible from a legal framework perspective. In our region, most of the time, the big cloud service providers are outside of the country, okay? So your question is about data retention policy. Is your question about your obligation to keep your data? Okay. So basically, every cloud computing contract comes with terms which tells you what can be configured and what comes by design, you know, which you cannot negotiate. So basically, I think the answer to the question would be to look at what can be done for having your own data retention period based on the contract you have. So to give you an example, if you're doing email as a service, you might have an obligation to archive all the email for being able to do e-discovery in the future in case of an investigation being done. Most of the time, all the cloud service provider will offer you that feature. So this is a feature you can enable, and then you decide how much you keep and how long. And basically, you will have a price which would be based on the use you do for that. If we're talking about other technology, then you need to look case by case.
You have to follow the life cycle of your data, and at what point you want it where, which data at rest, data in motion, and how is your data flowing. So when it comes to your data being shredded or destructed according to what you want, even if the cloud provider does not, cloud service provider, the CSPs can't give you, I think there are other ways around it. For example, if you wanted to shred your emails, if you apply a simple encryption and you only have the keys, then even no one can read into it, and you can just leave the cloud anytime you want. It's the same thing goes onto OS level, platform level. There are certain measures or certain, let me say, keys or approaches that you can achieve that.
So just to clarify, your question was about keeping data longer or destroying it in a safe way?
It's a mix of both, because
okay.
Yeah, in the company, if they say that my retention data is 5 years, and the cloud computing services has been hosted in a country that requested 10 years of data archive, how to combine between those both. But I think that the answer was good. Thank you.
I guess that's it. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Sebastian, Ahmed, and Cyril. And thank you all for being here.